Alright, welcome back to Nick Lenz Comic Corner, Classic Less Known Classics. This episode number 3178 and Doubleshot number 3072. I basically have a Marvel trade here and a IDW trade collecting issues from Mirage. First up we have is Venom War. Yep, this actually trade here collects the remaining issues from Volume 5 for Venom. It's basically issues issues number 35 to 39. Yeah, this is the end of Volume 5 before it gets relaunched as all new Venom, where Venom gets a new look and a new host. Al Ewing does the opening issue. 35, 36, 39 is done by Torn Graubuck. Kafu and General Panizza pretty much do the artwork for pretty much all these issues here. So, the opening issue is basically just a kind of a recap of basically Eddie Brock splitting himself into 400 pieces. Now, Eddie Brock is supposed to be King of Black, but yeah, he wants him symbiote back for reasons, despite the fact that he had no problem with it being passed to his son at the end of the previous volume. It's almost like, I'm not sure what happened here. I think the editor probably didn't want this or something else. I'm not sure then. They do their own thing, and of course, then after recapping that, and then we have where the symbiote gets basically gets to be hosted by a frickin' T-Rex, which is awesome. Then we have the whole Venom World thing. It's like a recap of like the beginning of the book-ish. We see Venom high on the sewers. Then him fighting, him deal with some other person here. And we see like him hanging on a trash can. Yeah, this basically at this point is sort of a loose recap, a little bit of the 80s book. And then we have Elsewhere in New York, where Dylan is basically being chatted to by the Eventuality. Well, he had chatted with him, and then we see Dr. Doom show up, along with, I think that's the Cobalt Man, maybe? Yeah, but chatting with this guy for a bit, and here's the Eventuality, you know, the giant hand, like, oh yeah, there'd be future. It's like, we are Venom. And then the issue ends, and him confronted by Old Man Dylan. Yep, Dylan Brock from the future. And then the very next issue, which, by the way, clear nod to Amazing Spider-Man 29. This is probably by far the most recent homage that Marvel has done with this cover. Oh, little fun fact for you. Did you know this issue here is actually the second issue of Venom to ever homage this cover? Yes, believe it or not, there was actually a cover from Volume 2 of the book by Rick Remender that did homage this very cover. And guess what other issues basically homage this very cover? The first issue of Punisher by Rick Remender. Yep. Believe it or not, there's actually a Star Wars book. Yes, a Star Wars book that homages the very cover. It doesn't get many homages, let's say, Uncanny X-100. That got more homages. It's probably about the second and third most amount of covers. We'll be done in the future where he's basically the thing that's keeping him alive, fighting up against these weird creatures. Yep. And then he's saved by an older version of Normie Osborn and Liz Allen. And we also see Bailey Briggs, a.k.a. Spider-Boy. Yes, Old Man Spider-Boy. I'm sure Torn probably had the included version of him because he probably had just been introduced last year, so they probably had the included because why not fight out these creatures? And then he goes back in time to meet with his past self, and then he proceeds to pay a visit punching a car. Actually, though, he runs into the Multi-Man. Yes, the Multi-Man. Liz Allen's stepbrother. And he basically gets hit by Molten. By Max. And he's stopped by Spider-Man, of course. And then, by the way, with this flashback here, we're at 37. There's only 2 more issues left to go. For supposedly a tie in the Venom War, it's mostly, put at this point, just a Dylan book. Dylan Brock book. Yes, after fighting Venom, of course, and then he leaves, and then he goes to the Sing of Sanctorum in Greenwich Village. Greenwich Village is a real place. This building is not. Nope. And I'm so glad that Marvel has never changed the appearance of the Sing of Sanctorum, despite Steve Ditko, the lawsuit that his family basically did for some weird reason. And I know probably the reason why that Marvel has never changed the look of this building. Why it has never really changed in the exterior. The exterior changed a little bit over the years, but not too bad. Here's my personal theory, because it's an iconic Marvel landmark. It's like, when people think of Marvel landmarks, this is one of them. Let me list off for you, before I continue here, the most iconic Marvel landmarks ever in the history of the comic book. The Baxter Building, the Sing Sanctorum, the Avengers Mansion. That's like that's been destroyed and had a few different looks, but that's an iconic landmark. The Avengers Tower is a more recent one, by I count it. The Xavier Institute, despite I think it's a prison now. Trying to think, what was their kind of landmark Marvel? I think that's it. Only 5. The only one that's ever been altered is Avengers Mansion, but there's usually a star reason why. But the one that everybody's been seeing the last 20 years, that's actually one that was from Ultimate Universe. So that's the reason for that. But I think the reason why that gets altered, and why nothing else does, probably because Stan Lee allowed it, despite the fact Kirby was one who designed the mansion. I'm sure he gave us permission to alter the thing for story purposes. They probably wanted to update the mansion. Fine. I would say Fort Phoenix Plaza was an iconic landmark for the story about Thunderbolts. Yes, I do count that one. At the top of my head, those are the most noteworthy ones. And guess where a lot of these buildings are? With the exception of like 1 or 2. New York City. Because the way Stan Lee expressed it, it's like, it's the world outside your window. Actually, you could be seeing superheroes. You could see Thor flying across with his hammer. You could see Spider-Man swinging on by. You could see Iron Man flying by, and his repulsor, his jetpack, whatever. That was the whole point of Marvel Comics. My guess is, I do have a nerd theory why this building has never been altered. It's because comic artists have a lot of respect for Steve Ditko. They may not agree with some of his opinions, per se, but they love his artwork. And this building is so iconic, they probably want to alter it. So you have Dylan paying a visit to Sing Sanctorum, where he's basically visited by Doctor Strange, who thinks he was actually harming him. I think it's a demon. Nope, it's basically just, it's keeping him alive. And after explaining everything, and then seeing a version of the building in the future, where it's been just damaged, but not fully destroyed per se. After dealing with seeing a vision of it being attacked. So then you see basically like these 2 kids. I don't know who these 2 kids are. It looks like possibly maybe Thor, really. I'm not sure. They have some spider creature here. And then we have Dylan reach the depths of the Sega Sanctorum in the future. And we see Chthon. Now he says, I'm the Lord below. Or in this case, above. Yep, it's something from the pages of Hulk. And find more of these creatures here. And then he goes back. And then we have the Simi being supposedly just killed. And then we have Doctor Strange brought to this place. And then he wakes up and basically doesn't remember anything. And then he just walks about. Eventually does remember, like Auto Man Venom. He goes to a door and sees a lady. Oh yeah, and it turns out the lady is actually Loki. Okay. Loki. Leading to final issue of this book. Yes, final issue. We see Mendes. And then we see Sebastian Shaw. I think so. And they pick up basically Joheim. That's basically where Joheim. Oh, and Loki is in the classic Jack Kirby garb. Yes. So this possibly mean that Dylan went back in time to basically classic Jack Kirby? Possibly. And they get into a fight. And of course, then they jump ahead a little bit. And it's basically just revisiting some stuff. Yeah, but Venom supposedly is like... And then the issue ends with present Dylan stabbing his father. This happened in the main Venom book. And that's it for this book. Yep, that's it. That is the end of Venom Volume 4. Yeah, Volume 4. After only... Yeah, it's 5. After only 39 issues. It is probably by far, like, of all volumes released Venom, this is only like the... I kid you not, only the second longest. It's only slightly shorter than Volume 2 by about 3 issues. But unlike Volume 2, which didn't, a lot of people, like myself, did not feel it had proper conclusion. It just ended. That felt like an end. The spot effect was included in the main event for Venom War. But reading this book, it felt like basically like a 1-inch focus on Eddie Brock and everything else focused on Dylan. Surprisingly, this will also be the end of Tora Garg's time writing Venom, because currently I think she just writes Catwoman. She was writing Carnage, and she did write a Carnage miniseries tie-in for this event, but as of now, I think like the only book I think she's writing now. Let me take a look here, because I don't think there's anything been selected for her to write after. Because she's not been selected to do the relaunch. That's Al Ewing. Yeah, he's still writing the book. Torrin herself. When Austin's book is officially wrapped up, like you might be asking, is the book coming out soon? She's doing. Yes. The 3rd volume for Spider-Girl. And it's the new one. Yep, she's writing this book. Yeah. Well, looks like one of the issues fighting the beautiful Lady Bullseye. That could be interesting. Yeah. But in the case of Volume 5, this was a very weird volume. It wasn't terrible per se. I did enjoy the artwork. Art was fantastic throughout this whole book. Like, we never had bad artwork. Yeah, the artworks kept changing. Though we started with Brian Hitch, obviously, and then we switched to different artists. But it was never bad. No, the artwork was never terrible. Despite we had like 2 or 3 different artists in this book, the book felt very consistent. I think the one thing a lot of people probably would turn up on this book, the fact this book went through like 3 or 4 different writers. Like, here's the thing. Torrin, now mostly put, Torrin herself was not the original writer for the book. You're like, really? Yeah, really, she's not the original writer. The first issue she wrote for this book was issue 23. That was her first issue, 23. Because a lot of this book was done by Al Ewing. And he did this book from the start with Ran V. The Ran V left after a very brief period of time. Oh yeah, he did. As for why Ran V left, I have no idea. But mostly put, Al Ewing wrote most of this volume, not all of it, but he did write most of it. There were some issues he didn't write, of course, because sometimes he would take turns either with Ran V or basically him doing solo-wise. And a lot of the time the book itself would either focus on Dylan or focus on... focus on Dylan or focus on Eddie. Ran V himself basically didn't do a lot of issues this volume. He did do the opening issues. He did the first 4 issues, 6, 7, and then he came back for issues 11, 12, 15, and that was it. Yeah, sadly put, Ran V doesn't do anything for Marvel anymore. No, he doesn't. Last thing here we did for Marvel was Web of Carnage. Yep, that was the last book he ever wrote from... last book he ever wrote for Marvel was that book right there, which came almost 2 years ago. I think because most of it he's basically like over DC. Like, his run for Marvel was not much. Like, here's what's released. Weather Realms War Scrolls, which he wrote... One of the stories in here. He wrote the Frank Castle issue, which I think was collected in... it was Warder Punisher. Then he did... there was going to be Empire Thor, but that got canceled, probably because of COVID stuff. Then he did Carnage, Black, White, and Blood. He did some Venom. He did some issues of Venom, Carnage... Free Comic Day issue, 2 of them actually. He didn't do much Marvel. Not really. Why in the world they do much Marvel? I do not have any idea about that. At least Torrance could be writing something. Yes, she has a new job. Don't worry, she's gonna be fine. And can you believe the first book she wrote for Marvel was Valkyrie Jane Foster? Yeah, she's going for Al Ewing on this book. And this is her first book she ever did for Marvel. Guess most what she did that book, King of Black and Valkyries, Mighty Valkyries, a Warhammer 4000 book, a Wastelander's Doom, a Captain Marvel annual, the Jane Foster Mighty Thor miniseries, a Punisher War Journal Blitz one-shot, 2 one-shots for Punisher War Journal, did a story for Nail's Death Notes, actually 3 one-shots, did a brief run for Thor, a short story for Darth Vader Black, White, Red, Realm X, this book, a run for Carnage, which also was continued, I think, in War of the Realms Carnage. I think she did write the Venom War Carnage book. She did. Yeah, so I've covered most of her era for Marvel. I think the only thing I left to cover for her is probably just Jane Foster Mighty Thor and Venom War Carnage. But as for this volume as a whole, I thought it was interesting. Yep, that's what I describe it. Alright, next up basically we have is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Classics Volume 4. This book contains issues 32, 33, and 37 of the original TMNT book, along with Turtle Soup Volume 2, Number 1. Excuse me. Kevin Eastman inks the first story of Egypt Adventure. He basically inks that one. We have Mark Blade does Adventure Turtles in Time, which was also a video game and a comic book, written by Jen Strand. Turtle Soup. Also contains 37 of Turtle Soup. Written and drawn by Rick McCullum. Twilight of the Ring is written and drawn letter by Rick McCullum and Brent Anderson. So, Issue 32 come out August of 1990. The whole thing of this issue is that it's basically looks like a female archaeologist, and it's basically about a mummy. I would say this is probably loosely adapted from the episode 2012 series, this one. The best way to describe it is basically Eternals take on ancient Egypt, which is quite interesting. I really enjoyed this one when I read it. Yep. Moving to issue number 33. This one is basically Turtles in Time, which is basically Turtles take on pirates. At the start of it, anyways. And basically do time traveling here with this one. They have basically it's all about pirates as well. Like first ancient Egypt, now it's turtles, now it's pirates. And then afterwards, they go to Japan. It's Japan? No, it's actually Dark Ages Europe. And then they go to caveman times. And they go back to present. Then we have Turtle Soup, which is the first issue of this version of Turtle Soup. Turtle Soup is like Tales of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's an anthology book. First one's called The Ring, which is basically, in a way, a parody of Lord of the Rings. That's basically what the story is. And it's like one story. One short story there. Then we have 37, which came out in June 1991. It's called Twilight of the Ring. You have Turtles basically hiking in the woods. Which are here with Casey in April. And Splinter's here too. Most of it is them just having a lot of fun. No Shredder here, just basically relaxing stuff here. Though, of course, also Splinter gets his arm chopped. At least someone gets his arm chopped off. Splinter? No, it's somebody else. Yep. And of course, Ate My Eggs basically fighting a giant rat who's not Splinter. And it's just a weird sci-fi issue per se. But that's it. That's it for the classic TMNT book, this one. Not really much to say about this one. I did enjoy the art for these issues. Yes, I'm going to give the book roughly a 8.75 out of 10. Yep. There's technically one more classic book left to go for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Though I'm reviewing a one-shot for the book. Yep. Excuse me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Particular review. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up, basically, we have is from Country Pumpkin, The Master Swordsman. Okay, bye.